Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another epic episode of Have Abnett. We are very excited to have you here. We're very excited to introduce you to our guest today, Mr. Kute Blackson. He is a transformational truth teacher and the best-selling author of You Are the One. And he has a new book coming out, very exciting, The Magic of Surrender, which already from the title, I can tell it's going to be a juicy one. So very excited to have him here. Mr. Kute, please say hi to everyone and tell them what you're all about.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to the interview and just adding value to your audience.
It's going to be a really good conversation. What's your story, Kute?
What's my story?
How did you get into this work? Because I always love hearing about what brought you to this moment here. Sure. I think a lot of people find little nuggets of familiarity. Maybe they can relate to certain parts of your story. And so it really helps to, you know what the value is. So let's hear it. What brought you here today?
Yeah, look, for me, I was born in Ghana, West Africa. My father's from Ghana. My mother's Japanese. I grew up in London. Now I live in the US and Mexico and kind of all over. So I feel like I've been on the path my entire life. There wasn't necessarily one particular moment when I started doing what I'm doing. For me, as a young boy, growing up in London, I was always a very empathic kid. I would feel people's feelings very deeply and feel people's suffering. So there was always a part of me that wanted to alleviate people's suffering. I just didn't know what that would look like. And so I grew up in a very, some would call it unusual environment. For me, it was just normal because that's all I knew. One of my first memories was literally being a chubby kid, lost in the crowd, and thousands of people. And I see this crippled woman crawling on the floor. She picks up the sand that this man walks on. She wipes it on her face and stands up. And so week after week, I grew up seeing, miracles. Blind people see, deaf people hear. The same man whose sand she picked up. And this wasn't me watching it on TV. This was me seeing it with my eyes every single day, every single week. And so, basically my father was the man who said she picked up, and my father was considered a miracle man of Africa. And I grew up seeing blind people see and deaf people hear. And, he'd look at a woman in a wheelchair and say, why are you in this wheelchair? Stand up. And so this was the sort of realm of possibility and environment I grew up in. And so when I was age 8, I started speaking in my father's audiences and get my first speech at age 8. So you could say my speaking career began at that point. And I was just thrown into the audience. And at age 14, I was ordained as a minister in my father's church. My father built 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa, a huge church in London. And so I was given the mandate to take over my father's legacy and operation and empire, so to speak. And so it was interesting when I was ordained and it was announced, when you just feel that something isn't quite right. And so I knew that this was not my path. I knew that this was not my destiny, but I was too scared. I was too afraid to speak my truth. My fear was if I really dared to speak my truth, if I really dared to tell my father how I felt and be who I was, that I'd be outcast, that I'd be alone, that I would be abandoned, And so for about 4 years, I went through a deep internal conflict, internal questioning, internal turmoil, and said nothing. And so it took me about 4 years to muster up the courage to speak my truth and confront my father. And I looked into my future and I felt this calling to come to America. I felt this calling to come to the US. I wanted to come to the US and Southern California to go to the field of self-help and personal development, personal growth, because this is where all of the authors lived, the teachers lived, everyone from Louise Hay and Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield. And so I felt this calling, and yet my soul was pulling me in a direction that was completely unknown. Yet my entire life and my entire path was set out for me, the expected path, and there were all these expectations and so much pressure put on me to fulfill my father's legacy. And so I looked into my future and I saw that I could be successful by everyone else's standards. But if I didn't have myself, if I didn't have my integrity, if I didn't have my truth, if I didn't have my own soul, then what kind of success is that? And so I felt as though if I followed the expected path, it would be not only a complete betrayal to myself, but it would be a kind of soul suicide. And so at age 18, I spoke to my father. told him I wasn't taking over. That was the moment my life began, so to speak. And we didn't speak for 2 years. It was really difficult, really challenging. I think sometimes people think that when you follow your truth and when you follow your purpose, everything is easy. I think sometimes when you follow your truth and follow your purpose, that's when the challenges really begin. And so that's when some of the challenges really started. And cut a long story short, left everything behind and ended up winning a green card in the green card lottery, which was crazy.
Wow.
Win a green card in the green card lottery. That brings me to the US, 2 suitcases, $800 in my pocket, knew no one in the country, just following my soul. And I'm a real believer that when you follow your soul, when you surrender and follow your deepest truth, it's not always convenient. It may not always make sense to your mind, but you will always end up in the right place, even if the route that you take is not the most expected route. And so that's what I did. Came to the US, age 18, age 19, landed in Los Angeles, went and found teachers and mentors and authors, you know, all the folks I'd read about, Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, Louise Hay, you know, and studied from some of these folks, learned from some of these folks. And then after a few years of being in the US, literally traveled the world, went to Israel, studied with some rabbis, went to Thailand, studied with monks, ended up in India. And that's what really impacted my life a lot. Went to India and had certain experiences. And it was from that internal freedom that I felt that I ended up coming back to the US and wanting to, maybe this was what, 18, 19 years ago, started coaching people one-on-one. And one person came and another person came, and, you know, my work grew and expanded. And, you know, 18 years later, 20 years later, here we are.
Holy crap.
That's the short version. I could keep going on and on, but I'll let you guys, let you jump in.
What a great journey. And there's so much to kind of unpack there. Number one, I love that you touched on the fact that, you know, and we've said it on the show, like, if you follow your heart, if you follow your dreams, if you follow your soul, you're never going to end up in the right place. Absolutely true. Or in the wrong place.
In the wrong place.
Yes, absolutely true. However, you know, it needs to be said, it's not for the feeble. It's not for the people that kind of want to play it safe and are comfortable in that safe zone. Cause you're right. That's when the challenges begin. Not everybody can come with you where you're going. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. So I believe everybody's capable when they're ready, but, you know, it's definitely you need to have your medal, you know what I mean, in order to do these things.
Yeah. You know, I think it can seem challenging following the unknown path or following your truth. And it can seem sometimes difficult, but there's a couple of things. I think some of those challenges and difficulties are really the necessary preparation, the necessary gymnasium that our soul needs to go through to prepare us to be able to fulfill our dream and vision. You know, those challenges really force us to evolve, force us to develop the mental, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, the personality refinement to be able to be the person that's capable of serving the vision of our soul. If you look at Nelson Mandela, part of his path, I don't wish it on anyone, I don't know if I could handle it, but if you look at a Nelson Mandela, he followed his soul. That took him to 26 years in prison, 27 years in prison, which was insane. You know, but we look at that situation, go, should he have not spent 26 years in prison? Perhaps it was that gymnasium, that process that really put him in a situation to evolve, to reflect, to develop that level of compassion, that level of resilience, that level of forgiveness, that level of vision that made him ready so that when he came out, he was able to have the soul force to be able to move the world in the way that he needed to be able to do so, that even when his physical body is no longer, he's still impacting the world, you know? And so I think, it is sometimes scary and difficult to follow your soul, especially when it's an unknown path. But I also think when you don't follow your soul, when you don't follow your truth, when you betray yourself, it's perhaps more difficult because now you have to live with the knowing that you're betraying yourself. Now you have to live with the pain of compromising your deeper truth. And I think quite often, many of us, we live with that pain, but we distract ourselves from it. We lie to ourselves, basically. We live with that pain and we distract ourselves from it. We drink it away, sex it away, drug it away, social media it away, work it away, shop it away, succeed it away, travel it away, just so that we don't have to feel that pain. But I think that pain that we feel from not honoring our soul, not honoring our truth, is a blessing, is feedback that we are not being truly authentic and honest with ourselves. So one place I would just invite people to start is realize that that pain is a blessing. That pain is feedback. That pain is trying to get your attention. And there's maybe a couple of questions I just invite people to sit with. This is something I had to sit with when I was a kid, when I was 17, 18, reflecting on my future. Number one, because I think one of the things that stops us from really living our potential, living and manifesting our destiny, breaking through to that next level, are all the ways that we lie to ourselves. In so many ways as human beings, out of self-preservation, out of fear, out of comfort, we lie to ourselves. We stay in relationships that we know it's not quite right. We work jobs that we know not the true expression for why we were born, and we settle and we rationalize and we negotiate and we make it okay, yet deep down we know the truth. And so question number one I just invite people to sit with is like, what lies am I telling myself? Just straight up, what lies am I telling myself? I think the ability for us to tell ourselves the truth, the willingness to tell ourselves the hard truth, even if you don't take action, even if you don't do something about it, but just the willingness to tell yourself the truth. You know what? I hate my job. You don't have to leave. You don't have to do anything, but I freaking hate my job. I'm not going to pretend anymore. I hate my job. And just feel that. You know what? I'm not in love with this person. This relationship is not right. You don't have to get a divorce. You don't have to take the pressure off of having to take action, and just acknowledge the truth and let that marinate. See how that feels. That begins a process inside. So what lies am I telling myself? I think the truth will set us free. To me, truth is real spirituality. Truth is real meditation. Truth is real spiritual practice. And so truth, but what lies am I telling myself? What am I pretending to not know? In so many ways, we play this game of I don't know, and this game of, let's say, confusion. Like, I'm not really sure what my purpose is, when deep down we do have a sense. But the fear is, if I really own my truth, what will the consequences be? My fear was, if I really own my truth, then I'm going to have to speak to my father, leave the church. I'll never have a relationship again. I'm going to be alone. My life is over. This was my terror. This was my fear. So sometimes it's survival. It's a survival mechanism that prevents us from truly acknowledging what we really feel. And so what am I pretending to not know? In so many ways, we play this game of I don't know, and we pretend as a smokescreen to protect ourselves from having to take action. And just sitting with the acknowledgement of the truth. And then I think lastly, the willingness to sit with and actually feel and be with and acknowledge and feel in your body, in your heart, the cost of the lies that we tell ourselves. Just to really feel like, wow, that this is actually painful, and to feel it. I think that begins a process of movement, of evolution, of transformation. So that's somewhere to start. I know I had to do that, and I know many of my clients do that, and it really starts the forward motion in a direction.
Yeah, Kelsey, I know you have so much to say. One last thing I want to mention is I love that you said you don't have to do anything, because I think a big thing that stops people is, well, if I admit it to myself and I know that this is true, I acknowledge that I know that it's true, then I'm going to have to change my entire life. And so let me just pack it away. Let me just, as you said, distract myself and just don't look at it, and see how long I can get, see how far I can, ride that horse into the ground. But I think that has an expiration date. It's like a slow way you said soul suicide. I don't know if anyone has ever put it in those terms on the show. Maybe they have, but when you said it, I was like, oh my gosh, that is what it feels like. It is absolutely true. Anyway, all good points. I'm obsessed with you. Go ahead, Kelsey. Well, I'm just thinking how this comes up time and time again on the show, because it's so important to feel your feelings and be in touch with them, and just to start somewhere. Because I think it can be scary. Like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to embrace my pain. Oh my gosh, I'm supposed to feel this horrible, uncomfortable sensation in my body. And it's like, once you do it 1, 2, 3 times,
Yeah.
you realize you're not going to die. You're going to be okay. It's a sensation in the body. And when you can take away the pressure and the stories and just feel the actual feeling in your body, the actual feeling, the actual sensation alone, without all the other bullshit that we usually pile on top of it, it's not so much suffering. It's just the actual pain isolated.
Mm-hmm.
And to be in pain is just a part of the human experience that we signed up for. So to be on this spiritual path and say, oh, I have to avoid my pain, or it's not about being in pain or whatever, like sometimes it is, you know,
sometimes that's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm. And it's so valuable, like how you're saying, because this is the information that we need in order to move towards our destiny and in order to embrace our truth. And it's like, how can you get to where you want to go when you don't have this information of like, where I am is not it?
Yeah, the pain is feedback.
Exactly.
The pain is feedback. And I think the pain like when we aren't truly being authentic, when we are betraying ourselves, when we're lying to ourselves, when we're disconnecting from our deeper desires, from our deeper truth, when we're not honoring ourselves, it's meant to be painful. It's meant to be painful. Like if you eat poison, it's going to be painful. You lie to yourself, it's going to be painful. It's not meant to be like, well, I lied to myself and I feel fantastic. It doesn't work that way. And so the fact that we feel pain, I think, is a signal that part of us is actually healthy. The alarm system in our consciousness is working. The challenge is we often don't pay attention to it. We often don't. It's the denial of it that causes more pain. And so I think there is something in our culture that doesn't create the space to embrace our pain and have a relationship with the pain in the way you were saying. Because, from the moment we were born, we're taught to avoid pain. We're taught to defend from the pain. We're taught to
don't
not
cry,
feel the pain.
You're
don't
fine.
cry, you're fine, be okay.
Yeah.
You switch on the television, TV says, wow, you feel pain. Pop a pill, you feel pain.
Right.
Buy this thing. Whatever you do, don't feel the pain. So there's something inside of us as human beings that we don't tend to acknowledge the pain because we feel as though it will be too much. We feel as though we can't handle it. We feel as though it's going to be overwhelming, that we'll never come back, that we're going to stay stuck in it. And what we have to realize is that all feelings are transitory. And all feelings remain present until fully felt. And when we truly, truly feel the feeling with total awareness, no resistance, as you were saying, it will dissolve. Every feeling has a natural cycle, maybe some more layers than the other, but every feeling dissolves when we actually feel them fully. And so I think one thing that would really help people, and you started touching on it, is when we take the label off of the feeling. This is what I found is really helpful. When you take the label off of the feeling and don't even label it pain, guilt or shame or resentment, but you just actually feel the sensation in your body, feel the feeling as sensation in your body without that label, and truly embrace that, you'll find that the wave and the layer of that feeling begins to dissolve naturally. The thing is, I think many times we think that we're feeling the feeling, but we're actually thinking about the feeling. We're thinking about the pain. And a lot of people say, but I've been feeling this pain for years, but we've actually been thinking about the pain and thinking about how we shouldn't be feeling the pain and thinking about and analyzing the pain rather than just experiencing the sensation of what it is through the body and allowing that to dissolve. And I think there's a difference, is thinking about the feeling versus truly experiencing the feeling and allowing that to dissolve. And so when we do, things move, and then we're able to use that pain to recalibrate. Okay, where is this showing me that I'm off? Or where is this showing me that I need to be more honest with myself about who I am and about what I feel?
I often think about, the only thing to fear is fear itself. And I always hated that as a kid. I'm like, that makes no sense. What are you talking about? But now I understand it's the anticipation of the pain that is so much worse. It is so much worse, especially if you try to dull it, than just feeling it for a moment. It's so much quicker. It's like a hack. It's like a hack that we don't want to do because we're afraid. But I think that the way you said pain is just feedback, joy is feedback. You know what I mean? Like if we can take away the word pain, which has so much weight behind it and negative, I guess, connotations, and just say, this is feedback. You know, I touch a hot stove, my finger's telling me not to do that again. Maybe I shouldn't. I go lay on a beach and I have nothing on my agenda but to feel good. That's telling me that I really like this and I want to do more of that. It's all feedback. So I think if we can and I know nobody's going to be perfect at this, but if you can try to maybe take, as you said, beautifully, take the labels off and just recognize it for what it is. It's your GPS for navigating this crazy human experience. What I like, what I don't like, what feels good, what doesn't feel good, and navigate accordingly. I think it would take a lot of stress off of a lot of people, I think, because taking away that word pain just, for me, is a game changer. Yeah, the labels, I mean,
the labels and the preconceived idea of what that feeling means.
Yes.
You know, we have so many preconceived ideas about what this means, what guilt means, how we should be feeling, how we shouldn't be feeling, what that is. This is good, this is bad. And I say, no feeling is good or bad. It's just energy. It's just energy. And so when we kind of take that label off and we just experience it, it's not good or bad. There's no resistance. It tends to move through and it tends to dissolve, you know? So when we feel the negative feelings and we really just have a relationship with them without resistance, they tend to dissolve much quicker. And then also on the flip side, what we tend to do is when we feel a so-called positive feeling, we tend to hold on to it and want to keep that forever. It's like, I don't want this to go. And that tends to sort of dissolve it and push it away. And so when we can just also, even with the positive feeling, just experience it without attachment, experience it without holding on or fear of like, I hope I can hold on to this feeling forever, knowing that it's energy. Energy moves, energy circulates. Everything has a cycle, that nothing lasts forever. And then we can just experience what we're experiencing while we're experiencing it. Then likely, even with the positive feeling, because we're not resisting or trying to hold on to it, it may last. We might find that it tends to last longer, you know? And so I've also found that when we suppress the pain, the so-called negative feeling, we also limit our capacity on the flip side to experience the joy, because
we do always say that. It's like a pendulum swing.
Yeah, it's connected.
We're in sync. Yeah, we're super in sync. I like whenever people have me on podcasts and they're like, oh, tell me your story. And I'm like, oh yeah, I was like really, really depressed, like almost committed suicide, went through this whole struggle bus. And then on the other side, like I had the capacity for joy that I never had before the depression, because you stretch yourself in one direction and there has to be like this balance, not a balance, but you get stretched one way and you also get stretched the other way. So your capacity to feel all things expands. And I want to like rewind a tiny bit because I loved when you were talking about the difference between thinking about a feeling versus feeling a feeling in the body. And I would love to elaborate on that and give like an example. So let's pretend that I'm the client, you're the coach, because I do this with my clients all the time in session, like teaching people how to feel. Nobody teaches us how to feel, right? So it's like, okay, let's say that I come to Kute and I'm feeling like sad, really. I have all these stories in my mind, just went through a breakup, blah, 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 whatever. That would look like in my body, maybe I'm expressing this to Kute in session, like, oh, I feel like my heart's really heavy. I'm noticing that there's water welling up in my eyes. I'm feeling the energy move down into my throat. I feel like there's something stuck in my throat. I'm feeling that my forehead kind of has tension, like just noticing the sensations in the body. That is, I guess, like a simple example of like what it is to feel. And I always find that it's helpful at first to like have a practitioner, because it can be scary if you're not used to being with your feelings, right? So to have someone holding space and be like, you're not going to die. It's okay. You're doing really good. Tell me more about what you're experiencing. Like, let's get curious about this. Let's make it okay to feel how you feel. That is like the most transformational, because I don't know if you notice this with your clients, but I notice with my clients, people go into their feelings and within moments to minutes, the heaviness passes. They're like, oh my gosh, I haven't felt this much relief in like 3 years. And I'm like, that's because you're running away the whole time. Exactly. You didn't actually feel it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is very poignant. Did I use that right? Poignant to talk about? Word of the day. Okay.
Word of the day.
No, it is very important. And I think all of us here, we tend to attract guests on the show who, obviously are in sort of the same field that we are. We're all helpers. We're all coaches. We're all mentors and teachers in that way. And I think that more people like you who are out in the world and recognizing that, okay, see, here's what gets me about you, sir, is you grow up as an empath and you're like, I want to help these people, where most people who feel everybody's feels want to just, nope, I can't. And they just, because they don't know how to process all of the stuff coming in all the time. And I would love to take a moment as a fellow empath to pick your brain as to what do you do? What have you put into practice, maybe as an empath, that kind of helps you not separate yourself, or maybe that is the right word, or put up some boundaries to where you're not just absorbing all the energy all the time?
To be honest,
or is it natural? Are you just naturally gifted at this?
To be honest, I don't really think about it that much. And, I can't give you some fancy thing that I do that's like, I do this thing and I do that thing. I think it's just the slow cultivation over time of working with people one-on-one in the beginning stages. And it was really through that expanding my capacity to hold more energy, expanding my capacity just to hold a bit more energy, and a little bit expanding my capacity to, because I've worked with thousands and thousands, expanding and a bit more and a bit more. And it's been, decades of just expanding my own nervous system's capacity to hold energy and work with clients, to be honest. So it's not really one thing. I mean, I have my own meditation practice. I have different things, but also, as a facilitator, when I work with people, I really am clear that I'm not the healer. It's not my job to fix anyone, to heal anyone. If for lack of a better word, God does the work. I'm really just holding the space. And I really believe that, it's not my job to heal someone, that there really is. So that really takes the pressure off, of having to hold the space, having to do it, being the one that's doing it, being the one that's healing, being the one that's facilitating, being the one that is causing the transformation. And if anything, over time, I've just endeavored to get myself out of the way and really trusting the innate intelligence inside of each person, inside of each client, that knows exactly what to do if I can just be present with them in a way. And obviously, there's ways I work with them, but I think that internal shift of knowing it's not like I'm the one that's going to do something has really, over the years, just freed me up to be with people and not have to take on the energy like I've got to do something to get them to be something. And there's a tremendous amount of freedom I found in that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I always say, you're walking the path. I'm just shining a flashlight and helping you navigate. And I'm just here to make sure you're, we have the container for them to show up authentic, 100% unapologetic, feel what they feel, be who they are. And as you said, work it out in the way that they know how, that they, let them be in their power. Everybody knows what to do.
There's an innate intelligence inside of every single human being that knows exactly how to heal. I think if we cut our finger, without even having to be a good person, meditating, praying, doing it, like it knows how to heal. And so I think that same innate intelligence is inside of every person's psyche. If we're able to hold the space, like for your finger, you hold the space, you keep it clean. You hold the space. You're not like holding the space. You just create the space of cleanliness. So I think with a client too, when we're able to hold just the space of loving and empathetic compassion and non-judgment, that it really facilitates a healing frequency, a healing environment for someone to self-correct in many ways. Obviously, there's ways of working with them inside of that, but that is the core foundation. So, yeah.
Hey there. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far, but if you want to listen to the whole thing, we're going to invite you over to our podcast. Either search for High Vibing It on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you guys listen to podcasts, or even better, if you want to watch the extended video version of this episode that's even longer than the actual podcast itself, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/highvibe. Lindsay, tell them what's awesome about the Patreon.
Patreon is where we have all of our extended episodes. As Kelsey said, we have it on video, so you can actually see the things that we're talking about. Sometimes we have visual aids, and it's nice to know what we're talking about. We also have hangouts that we do sometimes that are exclusive to Patreon people. And you can get started with all of this and bonus content and everything that we have only for the Patreon people for as little as $3. I think it's $3.33 a month. And that's it. And you guys can get all the benefits and all access to everything that we put in there. Really cool.
It's really cool, really fun, super easy to join. And you guys don't even have to do that to finish this episode. If you're like, screw it, I don't want to pay any money, I just want to hear the rest of this episode, go to our podcast, High Vibing It, search for it wherever you listen. It's totally free. Either way, enjoy the rest of the show wherever you choose to enjoy it. And we will see you guys next week because we do a new one every week. Adios.
Bye.